Hey, all, today we're going to change gears a bit and we're going to shift away from triangles and go back to talking about circles. We've talked about chords, secants, and tangents in the past, but before we talked about the angles that those segments make, and today we're going to talk about the length of those segments. So reminder that a chord is a segment inside a circle that touches the circle in two spots. So here I have two chords and they intersect, and when they intersect they create smaller little segments, and so this chord here creates a segment that's X and a segment that's 10, and the other chord creates a segment that's 6 and a segment that's 15. And so the relationship that exists here is that this one chord, those two pieces, if I multiply them together, they're equal to these two pieces from the other chord multiplied together. So if I multiply 10 times X, that's going to be equal to 6 times 15. Those products, those multiplications, end up being equal to each other. And so we can use that relationship to find how long the other piece is. So I take my two pieces from one chord and multiply them. I take my two pieces from the other chord and multiply them, and I solve this equation. And so that little piece I highlighted in yellow is 9 long. I have a cute way to remember this. You just need to remember that you multiply the two pieces together. So I'm going to multiply X and 9. Those are the two pieces that come from one chord. Here I'm going to multiply 18 and 10. They come from the same chord. Those are the two small pieces that are created. And so I can write that equation and solve it. So really we're taking this relationship, we're writing an equation, and now we're back into sort of algebra. So let me do one more. 6 and 6 come from one chord, so I'll multiply them together. 4 and X come from the other chord, so I'll multiply them together. And then I just have a fairly straightforward equation to solve. To find the missing piece is 9 long. So the other way we can see this is if we have two secant segments. Remember that a secant segment is a segment that starts outside the circle and goes through the circle, and it touches the circle in two spots. So there and there. This is also a secant. It touches the circle there and there. Or we have a secant and one tangent. So again, I have a secant here. It touches the picture twice. And then I have a tangent. It only touches the circle once. And they intersect outside the circle. So before we've dealt with what angles and arcs they make, and so we're going to talk about how long these segments are. The relationship that exists in both of these pictures is the same. You take the outside portion of one segment and multiply it by the length of that whole segment, and that's equal to the other segment's outside portion times the whole segment. So let's look at this two secant example first. 8 is the part of the segment that's outside, and the whole thing is these two pieces added together, so 8 plus X. So that looks like this. Outside 8, whole thing 8 plus X. Similarly, the outside piece of the other secant is 7, and I multiply that by the whole thing, 7 plus 17. And you could just add those together. 7 plus 17 is 24. And so now I have an algebra equation to solve. I need to make sure I distribute 8 times X and 8 times 8, 7 times 24, and then I just solve. So the inside portion of this secant segment is 13 long. I can do the same over here. My secant segment has an outside piece that is 12, and the whole thing is 12 plus X, or X plus 12. My tangent segment, the whole thing exists outside of the circle, so my outside piece is 18, and My whole piece is 18, so I end up with 18 times 18. And now I just have to distribute and solve. So make sure you distribute 12 times x, 12 times 12. And when we solve, we find out that that piece is 15 long. So I'm going to do a couple more. You want to identify the outside piece and then the whole piece. Outside, it's quite literally outside, so this one is 9. The whole thing are the inside and the outside together. When we combine things, remember we're adding them, so it's x plus 9. The outside piece here is 10. To get the whole thing, I need to combine 8 and 10. That's 8 plus 10, which is 18. So typically students can get this equation set up perfectly, and then some mistakes that get made are people add 9 and x to get 9x, and that's not appropriate. We can't add 9 plus x. They'll forget to distribute the 9 to the x and the 9. So make sure you distribute properly, 9 times x and 9 times 9, and solve to get x equals 11. Okay, we'll do one last one like the tangents. So I have a secant, outside's 18. The whole thing is both of these pieces added together, so x plus 18. And when I have a tangent, the outside is the same as the whole piece because the whole piece is outside of the circle. So the outside and the whole are both 30. Make sure I distribute here. Make sure you do 30 times 30. You put it in there twice, not just once. And we find out that that piece inside, the inside piece of the secant segment is 32 long. So I've got 2 for you to try. So try this one. I'll let this run for a few seconds, and then I'll show you another one. Okay, do this one as well. 2 problems. Make sure you give them a try. Even if you get them wrong, that's okay. And make sure you ask questions in class.